I always believed my best friend was like a sister, until she told my parents intimate details about my struggles that I shared in confidence, twisting the story to make me look like a failure. And now I realize she was never truly my friend, but a person who thrived on my weakness and used my vulnerabilities for her gain. I need to write this down before I lose my mind completely. My name is Sarah, hurt, and I destroyed everything good in my because I thought I was smarter than everyone else. It started with Jake. My boyfriend of 3 years, the guy who knew my coffee order by heart and left little notes in my lunch bag. The guy who was planning to propose on my birthday next month. I found the ring receipt in his jacket pocket 2 weeks ago, and instead of feeling excited, I felt trapped. That's when Emma came back into my... Emma had been my college roommate, my maid of honor at my sister's wedding, the person who held my hair back when I was sick and celebrated every tiny victory with me. When she moved across the country for work 5 years ago, we promised to stay close. Video calls every week, visits twice a year, the whole thing. But happened. The calls became monthly, then sporadic. The visits stopped. When she texted me last month saying she was moving back to town and needed a place to crash while apartment hunting, I was thrilled. My best friend, my sister by choice, was coming home. Jake was excited too. He'd always liked Emma, said she brought out my fun side. He even insisted she stay in our spare room as long as she needed. Family takes care of family, he said, and my heart twisted because he had no idea what was coming. Emma arrived on a Tuesday. She looked incredible, all successful and polished in ways I'd never quite managed. Designer clothes, perfect hair, this confidence that seemed to radiate from her skin. She hugged me tight and whispered, "God, I missed so much." And for a moment everything felt right. But something was different about her. Subtle at first. The way she'd pause before answering questions about her. How she'd change the subject when I asked about her job or why she really moved back. The way she'd study Jake and me together with this unreadable expression. The first red flag came during dinner that first night. I was telling a story about my recent promotion at work, something I was genuinely proud of, and Emma interrupted with, "Oh honey, middle management isn't really a promotion, is it? More like lateral movement with more responsibility for the same pay." Jake's face went tight. Sarah worked really hard for that position. Emma laughed, this light, dismissive sound. Of course she did. Sarah always works so hard. Sometimes I think she works too hard for what she gets back. No, the comment stung, but I brushed it off. Emma had always been direct, brutally honest, we used to call it. I told she was just tired from the move. But the comments kept coming, little digs wrapped in concern. "Are sure happy here?" She'd ask when Jake was in the shower. "Seems settled, like really settled. Is that what wanted?" She'd bring college memories constantly. Wild nights, adventures. The time we drove to Vegas on a whim. "Remember when used to be spontaneous?" She'd say, looking around our cozy apartment like it was a prison cell. And the worst part, she was getting to me. I started noticing things about my that I'd never questioned before. How Jake and I had the same routine every week. How we'd been together so long that we'd stopped trying to surprise each other. How my friends from work were all married with kids, and our conversations had become predictable cycles about mortgages and meal planning. Emma would take me out for drinks after work, just the two of us, and she'd order expensive cocktails while I stuck to. She'd talk about her, these exciting stories about travel and career moves and men who sent her flowers just because. Meanwhile, I was home by 9 because Jake worried if I stayed out too late. "He's sweet," Emma would say, stirring her drink thoughtfully. "Really sweet, but sweetness isn't everything, is it? Where's the passion? The excitement? When was the last time felt truly alive?" I should have seen what she was doing. I should have recognized that she was dripping into my ear, drop by careful drop. But I was vulnerable in ways I didn't even understand. The engagement ring was coming, and with it, the rest of my decided. The same job, the same apartment, the same predictable happiness stretching out forever. Emma made me remember who I used to be. Or who I thought I used to be. 3 weeks into her stay, she suggested we go dancing, like old times, she said. Jake was working late, some big presentation the next morning, and Emma had already picked out my outfit. Something shorter and tighter than I usually wore. "I don't know," I said, looking at it in the mirror. "This isn't really me anymore." "Exactly," Emma said, applying my lipstick with expert precision. "Tonight, get to remember who really are underneath all this domestic bliss." The club was loud and crowded and exactly the kind of place I hadn't been to in years. Emma moved through it like she owned it, her ordering shots and pulling me onto the dance floor. For a moment, I felt young again. Free in a way I'd forgotten was possible. That's when I met Marcus. He was everything Jake wasn't. Dark hair where Jake was blonde, tattoos where Jake was clean, dangerous where Jake was safe. He bought me drinks and whispered things in my ear that made me feel like the most beautiful woman in the room. When he asked for my number, I hesitated for exactly 3 seconds before giving it to him. "Good for," Emma said as we stumbled into an Uber at 2 a.m. "Deserve to feel wanted like that." The guilt hit me the moment I walked into our apartment. Jake was asleep on the couch, laptop still open on his chest, probably waiting for me to come home safe. I stood there looking at him for the longest time, this good man who loved me completely, and I felt like the worst person alive. But I didn't delete Marcus's number. And when he texted me the next day, I texted back. Emma watched it all happen with encouraging smiles and carefully placed comments. Or glowing, she'd say when I came back from coffee with Marcus. "It's nice to see happy again." She never said I should leave Jake, never explicitly told me to cheat. She was too smart for that. Instead, she'd make observations. "No, some people are meant for adventure and some people are meant for stability. There's nothing wrong with either, but problems happen when someone who needs adventure tries to force themselves into stability." Marcus was adventure. Pure, intoxicating, dangerous adventure. He was a photographer who traveled for work, who knew about an art and had stories that made my quiet seem impossibly small. When he me in his car after our fourth coffee date, I didn't stop him. And Emma was waiting when I got home, ready to listen to every detail with the enthusiasm of someone living vicariously through my mistakes. Or not doing anything wrong, she assured me as I cried in her arms that night. Or just figuring out what want. That's normal. That's healthy. But it didn't feel healthy. It felt like I was slowly everything good in my one lie at a time. Jake would come home with flowers or takeout from my favorite restaurant, and I'd smile in him while Marcus's cologne still lingered on my clothes. I was becoming someone I didn't recognize, someone who could look the person who loved her most in the eyes and lie without blinking. The worst part was how easy it got. How quickly I learned to compartmentalize, to be two different people depending on who I was with. Sarah the faithful girlfriend with Jake, Sarah the exciting woman having an affair with Marcus, and with Emma I could be both at once, dissecting every moment and feeling like I was starring in my own dramatic movie. I told it was temporary, that I was just working through some pre-engagement jitters. That once I figured out what I really wanted, I'd make a clean choice and everyone would be fine. I had no idea Emma was keeping score of every secret I shared. I had no idea she was planning to use every vulnerability I'd exposed. I had no idea that my best friend, my chosen sister, was about to destroy me in ways I never could have imagined. But that night, lying in bed next to Jake while he slept peacefully beside me, hurt, completely trusting and completely unaware, I made the decision that would change everything. I was going to sleep with Marcus, and I was going to tell Emma everything. The night I crossed the line with Marcus was a Friday in October. Jake was at his brother's bachelor party weekend, and Emma had conveniently made plans to stay at her new apartment for the first time. I told it was just coincidence, but looking back, I think she orchestrated the whole thing. Marcus picked me in his vintage Mustang, and we drove to this little cabin he'd rented outside the city. For the photos, he'd said earlier, showing me pictures of the fall foliage, but we both knew what was really going to happen. I won't go into details because they don't matter now, but I will say this, it wasn't worth it. Not for a single second. The guilt started before it was even over, and by the time we drove back to town, I was already planning how to confess everything to Jake. But Emma had other ideas. She was waiting in our apartment when I got home, sitting on the couch with a bottle of and this knowing smile. So, she said, patting the cushion beside her. Tell me everything, and I did. God help me, I told her everything. Every detail, every feeling, every moment of doubt and excitement and shame. I cried and she held me. And she said all the right things about how complicated love was and how I shouldn't be so. The heart wants what it wants, she said, stroking my hair like we were teenagers again. Can't help that I've outgrown what I had with Jake. That should have been my second warning. The way she assumed I'd made a choice, that sleeping with Marcus meant I was done with Jake. But I was too wrapped in my own drama to notice. Jake came home Sunday night with presents and stories and this excited energy that made my stomach turn. He'd missed me, he said. Couldn't stop thinking about our future together. His brother's wedding had made him even more excited for ours. I barely made it to the bathroom before I that week was. I walked around like a zombie, jumping every time my phone buzzed, convinced somehow Jake would just know what I'd done. Emma kept checking on me, bringing me lunch at work, staying close like the supportive friend she'd always been. Need to make a decision, she said gently after Jake left for his Wednesday night basketball game. It's not fair to any of to keep living like this. She was right, and I knew it. I just couldn't figure out how to untangle the mess I'd made. I loved Jake, but Marcus had awakened something in me that I couldn't ignore. I felt alive with him in ways I'd forgotten were possible. But Jake was my future, my safe harbor in every storm I'd ever faced. The decision got made for me the next Friday. I was supposed to meet Marcus for dinner, but he canceled last minute. Some work emergency. Emma suggested we have a girls' night instead, just the two of us, like old times. We could order takeout, drink, maybe watch some of our old favorite movies. It sounded perfect, exactly what I needed. But when I got home, Jake was there, and he wasn't alone. My parents were sitting on the couch, looking serious and sad in a way that made my freeze. My mom's eyes were red like she'd been crying, and my dad couldn't even look at me directly. Jake said, standing slowly, "We need to talk." Emma was there too, standing by the kitchen counter with her arms crossed and this expression I'd never seen before. Something cold and calculating that made her look like a stranger. "Honey," my mom said, her voice breaking slightly. "Emma called us, she's worried about." The world tilted. "What?" "She told us been struggling," my dad said. His disappointed tone threw me like a. They'd been making some really poor choices, that having an affair. I looked at Emma, waiting for her to correct them, to explain that she'd never say such a thing. But she just stood there, watching me with eyes that had gone completely flat. "I had to," she said simply. "We're spiraling, Sarah. Someone needed to intervene before destroyed entire." Told them. The words came out as a whisper. Told my parents about Marcus. Jake's face went white. Ooh, Marcus. And that's when I realized the full scope of Emma's betrayal. She hadn't just told my parents about the affair. She'd told them first, before Jake even knew. She'd called them, shared every detail I'd confided in her, and then invited them over to stage some kind of intervention. I thought they should know what their daughter had become. Emma said, and her voice was so calm, so reasonable. How she's been lying to everyone who loves her, living this double. My mom started crying harder. How could do this to Jake? To us, we raised better than this. I tried to explain, to tell them it wasn't what it looked like, that it was more complicated than Emma had made it seem. But every word that came out of my mouth just made things worse. Jake was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. "How long?" he asked quietly, It doesn't matter, I said, which was the wrong answer. How long, Sarah? 6 weeks, I whispered. He nodded slowly, like he was processing information he'd suspected but hoped wasn't true. Is that why I've been so distant? So weird about the engagement? I couldn't answer. Couldn't explain that Emma had been the one pushing me to question everything, encouraging every doubt, celebrating every step I took away from him. Because the truth was I'd made my own choices. I'd been the one to give Marcus my number, to meet him for coffee, to get in his car and drive to that cabin. I think I should go, my dad said, standing abruptly. This is not the daughter we thought we raised. My parents left without hugging me goodbye. They just gathered their coats and walked out, leaving me standing in the wreckage of everything I'd built with the 2 people I thought I could trust most. Jake was the next to leave. He went to our bedroom and packed a bag while I sat on the couch, too shocked to move. Emma had disappeared somewhere, probably to give us privacy for this final conversation. I found the ring receipt, I said when he came back with his suitcase. I know we're going to propose. He laughed, but it was hollow and broken. Tomorrow night, actually had this whole plan. Dinner at the place where we had our first date. Then a walk through the park where we said I love for the first time. He shook his head. God, I'm such an, or not, I said, crying now. Jake, are perfect. This isn't about, it's about me. I'm the one who's broken. Yeah, he said quietly. He left then and I was alone with Emma. She emerged from wherever she'd been hiding with this satisfied expression like a job well done. It's better this way, she said, sitting down beside me. No can stop living a lie. Destroyed I said, staring at her. Called my parents, told them everything I shared with in confidence. I saved from, she corrected. We're never going to have the courage to make a clean break. Now don't have to choose. And that's when I finally saw her clearly. This person I'd trusted with my deepest secrets, who I'd let into my home and my relationship and my heart. She wasn't my friend, she'd never been my friend. She was someone who thrived on other people's chaos, someone who got off on watching people destroy their own lives. She'd spent weeks carefully planting seeds of doubt, watering them with encouragement and validation, until they grew into the kind of decisions that would everything. Why, I ask. Why would do this to me? She smiled then, and it was the cruelest expression I'd ever seen. Because had everything I wanted, and were too to appreciate it. A man who worshipped, parents who were proud of, a simple little where everyone thought were perfect. She shrugged. It was annoying, so decided to destroy it. I decided to show everyone who really are, she said. Selfish, weak person who throws away good things because she thinks she deserves better. And now everyone knows, she was right. By Monday morning, the story had spread through our entire social circle. Emma had been busy over the weekend, calling mutual friends to check in and share her concerns about my behavior. She positioned herself as the worried friend who'd tried to stage an intervention, while I was the villain who'd betrayed everyone who loved me. My phone was full of messages. Some from friends who were shocked and disappointed, others from people who wanted details or to offer their own opinions about what I should do. A few from Marcus, who'd heard through the grapevine and wanted to know if this meant we could finally be public about our relationship. I ignored them all. The worst part wasn't the judgment or the gossip. It was the realization that Emma had been documenting everything. Every secret I'd shared, every vulnerability I'd exposed, every moment of weakness I'd confided in her. She'd been collecting it all like ammunition, waiting for the perfect moment to use it against me. And I'd handed it to her willingly, grateful to have someone who understood. By the end of that week, I'd lost everything that mattered. My parents weren't speaking to me. Jake had moved in with his brother and blocked my number. Most of our mutual friends had chosen sides and I wasn't winning. Even Marcus was gone. Turns out he wasn't interested in being with someone whose was completely falling apart. Too much drama, he said when he broke things off. I thought had together. Emma moved out of my apartment and into her new place, leaving behind only a thank note for my hospitality and a bottle of, for the road ahead. I was completely alone, and I was just beginning to understand that Emma's betrayal had only been the beginning. 6 months later, I'm writing this from my studio apartment across town. It's small and cramped and nothing like the I used to have, but it's what I can afford now that I'm paying for everything alone. I lost my job 3 weeks after everything imploded, not officially because of the affair, of course. They cited performance issues and cultural fit concerns, but I knew the truth. Word had gotten around the office. Emma had made sure of it. She'd called my supervisor, Jennifer, under the guise of being a concerned friend. I'm worried about Sarah, she'd said, according to Jennifer, who felt obligated to tell me why I was being let go. She's been making some really questionable personal choices, and I'm not sure she's in the right headspace for the responsibilities of her position. That conversation cost me everything. My career, my reputation, my financial stability. Jennifer had to let me go, she explained sadly. The company couldn't risk having someone in a leadership position whose personal had become such a public mess. Emma had weaponized every vulnerability I'd ever shared with her. She knew I'd struggled with anxiety in college, so she mentioned my mental health concerns. To my parents, she knew I'd always felt insecure about not being as successful as some of our other friends, so she made sure to frame my affair as a desperate attempt to feel important. She knew exactly which details would the most and which people would spread them the furthest. I tried to back it first. I called our mutual friends, tried to explain what had really happened. How Emma had encouraged every bad decision, how she'd manipulated the situation to create maximum damage. But who was going to believe me? Emma was the concerned friend who'd tried to help. I was the woman who'd cheated on her devoted boyfriend and lied to everyone who loved her. My word wasn't worth much anymore. The few people who listened to my side of the story would nod sympathetically, and then say things like, "But Sarah did choose to have the affair. Emma didn't force to do that," and they were right. That was the worst part. Emma had been calculating and cruel and deliberately destructive, but I'd been the one to make every choice that led to this moment. I'd given her the ammunition. I'd pulled the trigger on my own. Jake tried to reach out once, about a month after everything fell apart. He sent me a text that said, "I hope you're okay. I don't want." I stared at that message for hours before responding. "I'm sorry," was all I could manage, and even that felt inadequate. He wrote back immediately, "I know. I'm sorry too, for not seeing that we're unhappy." That made me cry harder than any of the anger or disappointment I'd faced. Even after everything I'd done to him, Jake was still taking responsibility for my choices. Still trying to find ways to blame himself for my betrayal. I wanted to tell him the truth about Emma. How she'd systematically poisoned my contentment, how she'd encouraged every doubt and celebrated every step away from him. But what would be the point? It wouldn't change what I'd done. It wouldn't undo the I'd caused. And honestly, I wasn't sure he'd believe me anyway. Marcus disappeared completely after the first week, blocked me on social media, changed his number, probably found some other woman to be his adventure. I heard through the grapevine that he'd moved to Portland for work, but I don't know if that's true. I hope it is. I hope he's far away from anyone else who might make the same mistakes I did. My parents started speaking to me again around Christmas, but things are different now. Careful, distant, they love me because I'm their daughter, but they don't like me very much. I can see it in their eyes when they look at me. The disappointment, the confusion about how they raised someone capable of such cruelty. "We just don't understand," my mom said during our awkward Christmas dinner. Had everything. A good man who loved, a stable job, a future. Why did throw it all away? I tried to explain about Emma, about how she'd manipulated the situation, but it came out sounding like excuses, like I was trying to blame someone else for my own choices. My dad just shook his head. "Even if that's true," he said, "she didn't make cheat. She didn't make lie. Those were decisions." Sarah. He was right, of course, but it didn't make Emma's betrayal any less. I found out later, through a friend of a friend, what Emma had told people about her motivations. She claimed she'd been trying to save me from making an even bigger mistake, that she could see I was headed for a complete breakdown and thought an intervention was the only way to help me. She was living a double, Emma had said. Apparently, someone needed to force her to face reality before she even more people. It was a perfect narrative. Emma as the heroic friend who made the hard choice to save someone she loved. Me as the troubled woman who needed to be stopped before I caused more damage. The truth was so much uglier. Emma had been jealous of my simple, happy. She'd resented my relationship with Jake, my stable job, my uncomplicated contentment. So she'd systematically destroyed it piece by piece until there was nothing left. But even knowing that, I couldn't escape the central fact I'd let her. I'd been so vulnerable to her manipulation because part of me had been dissatisfied. Not with Jake, exactly, but with the predictability of our together. The sense that my story was already written, that there were no more surprises waiting for me. Emma had exploited that dissatisfaction expertly, but she hadn't created it. That restlessness, that hunger for something more had been mine all along. The affair itself lasted less than 2 months, but the consequences have been permanent. I lost everything in my that mattered, and I'm still discovering new ways Emma's betrayal continues to me. Last month, I ran into Jake's mom at the grocery store. She was polite but cold, asking how I was in the tone people use with distant acquaintances. She mentioned that Jake was dating someone new, someone from his office who seemed really lovely. "She makes him laugh," his mom said, and I could hear the relief in her voice. "He's happy again. I'm glad he's happy. I really am." But it broke something in me to hear how easily he'd moved on, how quickly someone else had stepped into the space I'd left behind. Emma, meanwhile, has thrived. She got promoted at her job. Started dating some successful lawyer, bought a house in the neighborhood where Jake and I used to walk on Sunday mornings. I see her sometimes looking perfectly put together and radiantly happy, like someone who's never made a mistake in her. She never tried to contact me after she moved out. No apology, no explanation, no acknowledgement of what she'd done. Just silence, as if our friendship had never existed at all. I used to think that was the cruelest part. The way she could destroy my and then simply walk away without a backward glance. But now I realize the cruelest part is how she gave me exactly what I thought I wanted. Freedom from my boring, predictable adventure, excitement. The chance to feel young and dangerous and alive. I got all of that, and it cost me everything. I'm 32 years old and I'm starting over from nothing. No career, no relationship, no close friendships I can trust. I live alone in a tiny apartment and work a job just to pay rent. I haven't been on a date since Marcus, haven't made a new friend since Emma moved out. Some nights, I lie awake thinking about the I away. Jake's laugh echoing through our apartment. My parents' proud faces at family dinners. The simple pleasure of sharing every part of my day with someone who cared about every detail. I had everything, and I let someone convince me it wasn't enough. I let someone who hated my happiness talk me into destroying it. And then I handed her the to finish the job. People always say that cheaters never learn, that we'll just do it again with the next person who loves us. But I don't think I'll get another chance to prove them wrong. I don't think anyone will ever trust me enough again to give me the opportunity to betray them. And maybe that's for the best. Maybe some mistakes are too big to forgive even from. I know Emma reads these forums sometimes. I've seen her comments on posts about friendship and loyalty, always positioned as the voice of reason, the person who knows how to spot red flags in relationships. If we're reading this, Emma, I want to know that one. took everything good in my and turned it to ash, and did it so skillfully that even I believed were trying to help me. But I also want to know that I finally see clearly. Or not a good person who made a hard choice, or someone who gets pleasure from other people's pain, who thrives on chaos and destruction. And someday, when sitting in perfect house with perfect boyfriend living perfect, I'll do it again. Because that's who are. Someone who can't stand to see other people happy, who has to every good thing within reach. I just hope next victim is smarter than I was. I hope they see through concerned friendship and careful manipulations before it's too late. Because once let someone like Emma into secrets, into vulnerabilities, the damage they can do is irreversible. I learned that lesson with my whole as the price, and now I get to live with the consequences forever. Trust is the most fragile thing in the world, and some people spend their lives looking for ways to shatter it.